Good afternoon. Welcome to this live event here, or this live broadcast, I'll call it. I'm out doing foot drills. This is part of a series. I'm on an 8-week experiment where I'm testing, not a scientific test, but to observe the difference in neurotransmitter production based on results, based on things that I can do that I maybe couldn't do before. And so I'm doing footwork drills 3 times a week, and some of them I go live. Some are going live on probably on Saturdays like this, different times though. And I also will record some of the other footwork drills, and then I'll post them on Facebook, the Facebook group Life Expansion After 50. So the reason I'm doing this is because I was looking for a way to do the placebo effect on demand. I'm just wanted to get that camera set up right. I was looking for a solution to get the placebo effect on demand. I had enough experiences in my life where I knew the placebo worked. I also had enough experiences in my life from martial arts and some neuroscience work back in the 1990s, where I knew that there were ways to influence the body, but I just didn't have that connection. So I had this gap. I can get placebo effect certain times with certain things, and some of it was belief, but then what would happen is when the belief dropped off, or you got triggered, or some event happened, it wouldn't work. And on the other side, where I could influence my body with things, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. So I had hit or miss on both ends. And I was looking for this solution, which I call placebo effect on demand, because we know with epigenetics, we've seen spontaneous healing, and whether you believe it or not, the fact exists. I mean, there's stories out there. But on the other side, you have people who have spells cast upon them, and they get sick, even die from the spell. There's one story out there where the doctor actually entered into the, the, the narrative, if you will, and made believe that he pulled a frog out of this guy's stomach. I forgot where I read this. Made believe he pulled the frog out of the guy's stomach, had it there in the bucket, and the guy was cured, and he went on with his life. So we know that how powerful the mind is. The objective was to find a way to manage it. Now, that's a data point. The second data point is that I knew from personal experience and also from reading that sprinting had a huge benefit. Mitochondria, testosterone for men, and then estrogen for women after menopause. It turns out that there's many other things. I knew about the mitochondria. I started wondering about the NAD plus, and sure enough, NAD plus is a benefit from it, but also serotonin and dopamine, feel good serotonin, and the habit neurotransmitter dopamine, but also acetylcholine, which has to do with the neural pathway communicating to the muscle at that muscle junction, and then glutamate, which has to do with the central nervous system communicating to the neural pathway. So all of these things are coming into play. I was getting back into sprinting, and I started looking at footwork drills to prepare myself for sprinting, because I didn't want to get hurt. I've been there enough. I've learned to respect sprinting. Sprinting is such a violent activity when you're looking to improve your time. It's okay if you're just out doing casual sprinting, but when you're trying to beat your last time, it gets violent. And when you pull muscles and you pull, these injuries last for weeks, if not months. So I wanted to respect that, and I also wanted to get faster. I want to get my sprinting speed down to where it was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, it was actually close to what it was in my 50s. So it's a pretty tall bar. It was a pretty tall ask for me to do. And so that's why I'm doing it. And I'm using the recording because it kind of forces me to get out and do the drill, whether I want to or not. It's context for the activity. Also wearing a weighted vest. So this is a 4-pound vest. I have 1 pound in it. So that was the objective, to add 1 pound a week. So this is the last day at the 5 pounds. Next week, I'll be at 6 pounds. So I'm doing the footwork drills. I'm just now starting to work on speed. I've been working on just getting the foot movements right. So that said, the connection is that turns out, one more thing, sprinting, the downside of sprinting, or not the downside, but the constraint of sprinting is that I have to recover for a week, especially if you're going out all out. And I assume that the benefits came when you're going all out. Turns out you don't really have to go all out. There's other factors. But it was that issue that made me feel like there has to be a better way, something I could do every day. I want anti-aging. I want placebo effect on demand. Well, with footwork drills, I can do them every day because you don't have to recover if you're not doing the same exercise. The point is, we're not doing this for the muscles, we're doing this for the neurotransmitter, which means activating new neural pathways. So we have 100 billion neurons. Each neuron is connected to anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 other neurons. It might take a whole 1,000 neurons in a neural pathway just to take a step. So if you think about that, and then you consider how many neurons are involved with doing footwork drills and sprinting and these things, you recognize the opportunity. And the reason why it works is because the neural pathways strengthen from deep practice. There's two ways that they strengthen. One is myelin. Myelin wraps around the neurons and it makes them fire faster, stronger, more accurately. And an accurate firing neuron is what allows me to put my foot in between the cones. When they're not firing accurately, they come all over the place. You may have experienced, and by the way, this is life expansion after 50. So there's some things that if you're 30, you may not have experienced yet. But most people in their 60s and 70s have experienced stumbling. They get down off a step and they kind of stumble. Think of that as the neurons not firing exactly right. They're outside of that plus or minus 4 millisecond range. The objective is one. So let me back up. So the neurons get wrapped with myelin. That makes them fire stronger, faster, more accurately. But the body's efficient. And what it does is it deactivates, for lack of a better term, the process is called synaptogenesis. It's like pruning. But the body removes the synapses from the neural pathways that are not being used, and it moves it over to active ones. So the longer we go without using a neural pathway, the more it deactivates until it's not active at all. But the myelin still remains. So it has the capability and the potential to fire quickly. But without the synapse, it's not connected. Remember, the neurons are connected with synapse, and the synapse is the neurotransmitter, including dopamine, acetylcholine, glutamate, and serotonin, glutamate, dopamine, and acetylcholine. And other neurotransmitters as well. Without the synapse in between the neurons, they're not firing. When you activate a neural pathway, and it can happen in minutes, hours, days, but not weeks. So that's how you can tell the difference. If you're starting something new, or you go to a physical therapist, you may think you're working on the stabilizer muscles. You are working on the stabilizer muscles to a degree, but it's more about activating the neural pathways. That's why the exercise is so simple when you go to a physical therapist. They're so easy, and you feel like, what can this possibly do? But because you're activating the neural pathway, it doesn't matter that you don't go to failure. It's not about going to failure. It's about deep practice. And to think about deep practice, what you want is novelty. So I set up cones differently. I'm always trying different routines. I go on YouTube and find different routines, find ones I like, and then go try it. You need intention. And I look at intention as also having context. So the bigger context is I want to get faster at my sprinting. The bigger context than that is to be strong in my 90s into age 100 and not frail and be able to stay active. The intention, though, is today I'm working on 1 foot because I can't sprint as hard as I can because I've got a messed up hip flexor. So I'm working on other things. I'll still be running, but I'm going to be working on 1 foot because that's going to translate directly to faster sprinting. Think of it as pushing off with the foot, but I noticed that my 1 foot drills are very weak. So novelty, intention, then we need precision. And you'll see that once I warm up, I'll start doing a precision drill. I'm pointing to the cones because that's where the precision drill will come from. And I believe that by a few more weeks, I'll be able to have those cones closer and still do the drill. Today, they're still too close as they are. We need balance. The balance will come in a little bit in my warm-up. I'll show you that, but certainly the 1 foot drills will be doing the balance. And we need explosiveness. So explosiveness is going to show up both in the cone drill, the 1 foot drill, but it's also going to show up when I do the bounding from the sides of that warm-up. And then we have progression. So progression is getting harder. That's why I add a weight, 1 pound every week. But I'm working on more speed And I do have a timed course. I have a couple of timed courses where I set them up the same way. And that's only once a week where I set up the course the same way. And I'm doing this. I want to meet last week's speed with the extra weight. And so far that's working out. And I won't go to the next weight if I can't get back to my speed range for that particular course. It's 40 to 45 seconds is the range I want to be in. My baseline time is 42 seconds. And then the last one is struggle on the edge of ability. And so I'm always struggling on the edge of ability. I'm always adding something or switching something up just to struggle on the edge of ability. So those are the 7 factors. I'm doing it having to do with footwork. But if you look at the broader topic of anti-aging, it doesn't have to be footwork drills. It doesn't have to be anything strenuous. It could be walking up the stairs. It could be getting out of a chair. It could be doing wall squats. It could be walking backwards. It could be on a treadmill going sideways. Now, those all are exercise. So I can't give you a pass on that. I'm not going to give a pass for not doing exercise because the lymphatic fluid cleanses the blood. And that's one of the deals that we have to work with. And I'll talk about it next week when we do the physical area. Today, I'll talk about the mental area at the end of the footwork drills. I'll talk about the mental area of the 7 fitness areas framework: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, relationship, professional, and then financial. But we've got to get the lymphatic fluid moving because it doesn't have a pump, and we have to have clean blood. We have to have nutrients that get to the organs. And if the body's working too hard to get the blood to the proper pH, which is something like 7.35 to 7.45, if the body has to work too hard to get the blood to that pH level, then we're creating inflammation and oxidative waste. And inflammation is a problem. By the way, footwork drills reduce inflammation. There's so much that comes out of this footwork drills and sprinting. But if you just maybe like art, painting different things, going to a different, like I go to different parks. That's novelty. You can, if you like art, you can go paint at a different park. You can paint in a cityscape. If you don't do any of those things, drive your car to a train station and get on a train and go somewhere different. Just go through that process. One of the things I started doing is I ditched my rollerboard when I'm at the airport. I carry a backpack. I wear a backpack and carry a shoulder bag. The logic was that I'm not going to build any muscle carrying this bag. So what's the point? I'm not going to do this like reps, or it's not exercise. So why am I going to go through that? But once I learned that I'm triggering and activating neural pathways, now I carry the bag and I take the stairs. So I'm forcing my body to flood. I want to flood my body with neurotransmitter because that's what we do in reverse as we age. We stop putting a demand on ourselves. The central nervous system is looking to be efficient. It stops the neurotransmitter production. And next thing you know, you can't do this and you can't do that. And that's a powerful understanding. When I got it, it's no problem come out here doing footwork drills. And I make it like play. In fact, there's a term called fartlek, F-A-R-T-L-E-K. It's a Swiss word for speed play. But you can apply the thinking of the novelty, intention, precision, balance, explosiveness, progression, struggle to anything you do. You could even do knitting and stand on one foot while you're knitting. And that's balance. And then the precision, you could do different stitches, right? You could go learn recipes. You can cook. You can put one foot up while you're cooking. That's balance. And by the way, martial artists have been talking about this for years. What's interesting is the Eastern arts, the martial arts, they had it right. But they didn't have the brain scanning tools that we have available to us today to understand why it works. But something as simple as turning a doorknob and you may Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, right? But turning a doorknob with precision, just turning it and like, I'm going to turn it exactly 90 degrees. That's adding precision. What that does, the whole struggle, deep practice, without going too deep into it, you can read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth or Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. They get into deep practice and different perspectives on it. But the idea is that it's telling the central nervous system that this is important, and the central nervous system activates those neural pathways. That's why if you're in martial arts or you like sparring or whatever, and you train with somebody who's done internal strengthening exercises, sometimes when they block you, sometimes their limbs feel like steel. And imagine like in Tai Chi, it's like, what is that? They're not doing anything. Well, they're doing a lot because they're activating neural pathways along that entire range of movement. Same thing with yoga. Yoga gets to all of this, but if you are practice, if you do practice yoga, I would suggest always working on something different. Don't get into a routine, because that's the other side, is that the body wants to get to a routine that and make whatever you're doing stasis. So it's very important to always add some progression into it, mix it up, keep going, because we want to keep activating more neurons. We want the central nervous system biased towards promoting more or creating more neurotransmitter. And just so you know, so I go live and I record it, and then I will take down the live recording and replace it with an edited recording. So little spaces and timing like that, I'll take those out of there. But the essence of the message is the same. All right, so first I have to warm up. And the warm up is just like anything else. You start off slow, just getting my feet moving. Notice how I'm feeling. Notice how I'm pausing. Just giving it a little bounce. So that's nothing there. The precision comes because I'm working on putting my foot between the space. Now, I'll do a little bit faster and add a step off at the end. So instead of pausing like this pausing, I'll push myself off. I might step out a little bit further. So that's a warm up. Stop it there. But you can see how the struggle on the other ability is coming in. A little bounding, this is the explosiveness part. Now, a couple of other things that happens. So normally, if I was doing real footwork drills for sprinting, I would be recovering more in between each exercise, because getting this much out of breath is going to have an impact. Plus, it's maybe like 100 degrees today. We're in a little heat wave here. I'm in the shades, that's going to help. Now, I'm spiking the breathing. This is important. I already talked about the lymphatic fluid. But breathing, most people tend to breathe too shallow. And we should be breathing much deeper. If you do this one simple thing, give it 2 weeks, you'll start to notice a difference. 5 minutes in the morning, 10 counts exhale, 10 counts inhale. 10 counts exhale, 10 counts inhale. So that's going to be 3 breath cycles per minute. And you don't want to start there. And this will also demonstrate for you how this progression works, how they're activating neural pathways. If you just right now tried to do 10 counts in, 10 counts out, like so I just did 10 counts exhale, 10 counts inhale. So that was 20 seconds, 3 breath cycles a minute. But if you just out of the blue try and do that for 3 or 4 or 5 breath cycles in a row, you're going to start feeling like you want to inhale or you want to exhale. Try this. In the morning, you drink a liter of water, and while you're drinking the water, you can take a break on the breathing while you're drinking the water, make it simple. But start off with just 4 counts, 4 counts exhale, 4 counts inhale. The next day, do 5 counts, 5 counts inhale, 5 counts exhale, and do that for 5 minutes. The next day, do 6 counts, the next day 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to do 10, because the central nervous system has sort of a forward-looking mechanism that tells it that tougher times are coming, and I mean that in a positive way. More demands are coming, so we need to front load that to get some more neurotransmitter in, and that's what happens. That's why the progression is important. So if you don't do that, the body will automatically just settle in and, oh, okay, and it makes it automatic, right? It sets the energy up, the neural pathways are there. It's just automatic, and then you're not really generating any neurotransmitter. That's why if you lift weights, you change up your routine every 6 to 8 weeks. I used to think plateaus were something that the muscles had to go through. The plateaus are happening because the signal gets weak, because the body stops creating neurotransmitter. If you change up your routine, the body's going to generate more neurotransmitter. So here's the other part of the warm-up. You saw what I was doing before. So we go, the difference is that this time I'm going to bound off of the end to go a little further. So that starts to get some explosiveness in there. And I'll start moving the cones a little closer, because I want to skip to that. I want to skip 2 spaces. Once I can skip 2 spaces, I'll start moving them a little further apart again. And that's an idea of the progression, just what I was talking Well, that was interesting. The heat caused the phone to go dead. I think I solved it. I have a device that I can see myself through the back camera. So I'll just make sure I'm stepping far enough back so you can pick up. Yes, and I think that the double heat plus, like I said, is going to be 98 degrees. It's probably a little over 90 right now. So if the body's responsible for expelling 70%, or I say breathing is responsible for expelling 70% of the body's toxins, the fact that I'm breathing so hard and exhaling like that, that's a good thing. Plus, I'm spiking the heart rate, which helps heart rate variability. And all of this you can look up. You can Google each one of these terms. But because they live in different disciplines, whether it's neuroscience or neurobiology or biology and what have you, the heart rate variability helps with willpower. You are probably familiar with decision fatigue. And it's similar. Through the day, the willpower wanes. With the number of decisions we make, willpower wanes. But the stronger your heart rate variability, the better your willpower. And there's more to say about willpower. Today, I'll be finishing up talking about the mental area, and I'll bring up willpower because I think it's important. Right now, so we've got 2 more drills here. Bit of improvisation there. I started going front crossover. The cones are too close together. So I had to switch to back foot crossover or rear crossover. Now, covered a lot of ground. I want to emphasize, I'm doing this experiment using exercise footwork drills. I'm sprinting once a week, doing footwork drills 3 times a week, doing heavy lifting 1 day a week, and then some other exercise, and then also taking a recovery day. After sprinting, I learned that the hard way. Literally just got completely drained. Sprinting is too much of a demand. All right. Now, I want to emphasize, it doesn't have to be about this kind of exercise. If you find yourself using the arms of the chair to get up, you can use progression there. Start activating new neural pathways. Use one arm and then the other arm. Use no hands. Lean your body forward. Just try different things. If you're used to pulling yourself upstairs, going with the banister, stop that. Maybe use 2 fingers on the banister and eventually no banister at all. If you tend to go upstairs 1 foot at a time, just work on going up 2 steps, right? And check with your doctor. Obviously, this is not about a physical fitness thing. This is about anti-aging. And what I didn't connect the dots on is that BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, AMPK, which has to do with modulating metabolism. So you think about insulin sensitivity and glucose uptake by the muscles. That's improved by AMPK. BDNF is about neurons, and even to the point where it uses stem cells to develop new neurons. This is just amazing that it's not been talked about. And I don't think there's anything nefarious going on. I think the bar is so high for scientific research, especially when you consider that a lot of this in the neuroscience field is in the infancy. The brain is over 100,000 years old. And a lot of these breakthroughs have been in the last 4 decades, which is just baby steps in the context of a million-year-old brain. But yeah, when you look at all of that, the people spending money for supplements, NAD, and some other supplements, right? You're seeing there's moringas out there. Uh, some of them I think work because of the placebo effect. Some of them actually do work, but the doctors will tell you you're wasting your money on supplements. I don't necessarily have that position, but I do know that the acid in the system is so strong that it's hard for supplements to survive long enough to get through that. But the other thing is the body's going to get what the body needs, and it's going to extract the nutrients. If you're eating clean, the body doesn't have to work so hard. You're going to have less inflammation, less oxidative waste, and more nutrients to go around. But it's going to get what it needs, and that's, I think, why the supplement argument is there, because if the body gets what it needs, you can eat garbage and still get what it's at a price. Let me do some quick sprints, and then I'll do the footwork. So I'm doing the single steps to last, because I'm doing the single steps to last because they take so much energy. And I should say, because I'm working on improving it, I want to have enough energy. I'm just contradicting myself. I'm saving the single footwork drills to last. I'll leave it at that. Now, a little clarification. I did say that I change up the footwork drill every time. But this one I would say is pretty much of a staple. That one's a staple, and so is the one I did with the warm-up. But I do mix it up, and I do mix it up within the context of the drill. So this drill here is the basic 4-cone drill. You might see that, and then you can cross, shuffle, straight forward. You can cross with shuffle, or you can cross with rear foot crossover. You can cross with front side crossover. But I'm going to do a variation. This is one of those that I will need to recover. So it's an X drill. This is a good drill because it gives me a chance to work on a lot of things at once: the precision, the bounding, and also the sprint start. So a big part of sprinting is the start. Normally sprinters have their feet in the blocks and they're able to push off with both feet to get going. The way I'm sprinting, it's just off the ground. It's from a static start. No blocks. And so the first 4 steps are important. And the idea is to lean forward a little bit and push off. I try to push off a little bit, like from the side to the center. So I might be stepping a little bit wider the first few steps because I want to have more room to push off. Think about it as torque at the beginning and horsepower in the middle and the end. And then I'll introduce another drill now that I'm starting to work on speed to get myself tired. So I'll do a drill, I did it last week, a longer drill that takes me outside of like 15 seconds, and then I sprint. So it's learning to sprint at when I'm already exhausted. Let's do this again. So that's just a quick drill. Now, you'll notice it doesn't take very long. I'm doing more talking than anything else because I'm having to recover. In sprinting, I may sprint for 12 seconds using 3-minute recoveries. So it's kind of standard. So many benefits. I encourage you to Google what are some of the anti-aging related benefits with sprinting. And then you can go down the rabbit hole on the different ones. But once I started looking at the world through a lens of neural pathways, and we'll talk about that at the end here. So we're just a little over half hour now. So finish up with this one. So you start seeing the world through the lens of neural pathways. Make sure. All right. Seeing it through the lens of neural pathways, I realized the importance of the myelin and the synapses, synaptogenesis, the neurotransmitter, the serotonin, the dopamine. Serotonin, people think of it as part of as being in the brain. It's produced in the gut. And serotonin is the feel good. So I would say from a mood standpoint, one of the things I remember working out in martial arts, I always knew that when I was training in schools, in the martial arts, everything was better. My grades were better in school. I felt better. Any sports I was playing, I could do better. And I knew there was something there, but I couldn't piece it together. And then when I went into the Army, Airborne School, Ranger School, other special schools, training SEALs, you see these patterns keep showing up. And my brother was into internal arts, and we had a lot of conversations about that and some of the power that the masters would have in that discipline. And then I connected with the neurotransmitter, and it seems to all come back to that. That one thing, neurotransmitter, it's not the neurotransmitter, it's the things that generate neurotransmitter also improve these other areas. That's my takeaway right now. That's why I talk about it each week, because then I have to go do research and check myself and come back and clarify. But I do say you want to be moving. You don't have to do footwork drills, although if you can, work up to that. But taking steps, stepping up off the curb and then back down. Stepping up on a step and then back down. If you're in a gym, you probably see people pushing weight sleds around and weight sleds around and doing different exercises. Stop playing around. Make it playful. Change it up all the time. All right, so here we go. What we're going to do, the objective is to do something like this. 1, 2, I'll do it the other foot is stronger. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You can see I can't do it. I might be able to do 2 in a row. So 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. So here's an example of what I was talking about, getting up out of the chair with one arm and then getting out of the chair with your hands on your knees, and then getting up out of the chair without putting hands on the chair at all. Here's an example. I'm not going to use my other foot, but I'm going to balance with my other foot. So I'm taking one of the 7 factors out of it, but I've got 6 other factors. I'm struggling on the edge of ability, and eventually I'll be able to pick up that other foot. Sort of like a person doing handstands on the wall and then moving away from the wall with 1 foot and then moving away from the wall with 2 feet. It's the same principle. You're activating neural pathways. So I'm going to use 1 foot as just like a balance sort of thing. And that works great because it only tapped down 3 or 4 times. But knowing it was there, I could work on my balance better. Nice. And that's, again, it's art. A little bit of science, a little bit of art, making it up as I go, trying new things. But that right there is a game changer, because now all my footwork drills, I can use that until I don't need the crutch. Nice. I almost did a whole rep without the foot touching that quick. It's just how fast the neural pathways can get activated. See, and there is a difference between, see how I'm winded already. There's a difference between myelinating a neural pathway and reactivating one that exists. So getting a rapid myelin takes longer. Same 7 factors, but it's going to take more time and deep practice and routine, and it should be exhausting. If you're playing the piano and you're using deep practice, you'll find that 5 minutes of practice can be exhausting. The same way is if you decide to start driving in different cities and following different directions and using a map instead of GPS, what you'll find is that it's exhausting. But the third weekend you do that, it's not exhausting anymore. Yeah, so it looks like everything is working well. That heat problem, let's see this other camera. So this one did have a heat problem. So that one did have a heat problem, but no harm, no foul. Anyway, we'll do this again. Left foot is a little weaker, the ankle's weaker. I've got a problem there. Let's try it again. So slowing it down helps. All right, that is it. Now, what I'm going to do is simple little workout. Probably do it in 10 minutes if I'm not talking and I'm not exerting myself too much. Now, last week I talked about, let me set it up. This next part of the conversation is the 7 fitness areas. That's my framework I use as a coach to help people through making the shift from have, do, be to be, do, have. You may not realize or may not think about it that way, but if a person is not happy with their results, their outcomes relative to inputs, or their outcomes relative to intentions, there's some way that's breaking down in these 7 fitness areas. So it's mental, which is what I'm talking about today. I'll do part 2 today. It's physical, the blood, the oxygen, health, lymphatic fluid, getting rid of toxins, making the body work, setting up so the body doesn't have to work so hard for toxins. And then the spiritual area, that's going to be awareness and helping you gain control of the present, powerful present moment. And then we have emotional. So if you're getting hijacked or easily triggered, we get rid of that. And then the have side, which is relationships, professional, and financial. And I run laps around the first four: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, to gain space and agency and personal leadership to make sure it's big enough to do the task that's calling you in the relationship, professional, financial. So let's say you're starting a new division in your company. You're gonna have to step into a new identity to do that. And that's where we do those laps. And then you actually exercise it and practice it and use it in the relationship, professional, financial. So that's just the way. Or if a person's looking to change their career, we first have to step into the new identity that's going to prevail in a career search, and then excel and succeed and thrive in a new position. So we don't want to take the old habits in there. We want to start with new habits. And you can think of the 7 Fitness series as a way of resetting your identity. So what I did was I said that we have a stimulus, a reaction, and a response. And what I said was, too many people, they let their response equal their reaction, which is not a good thing. Then last week we spent most of the time talking about the fact that there's a big space, and I call that the pre-stimulus. But when you think about 33,000 stimulus response cycles a day, we're constantly priming ourselves for the next stimulus response. This is why people in the field talk about all you're doing is repeating the same patterns, you're living the same habits, you're running the same life over and over and over, and you think you're trying to change, but it's not going to change because you keep doing the same thing over and over. And you got 33,000 decisions or 33,000 stimulus response cycles, and they're all feeding and priming the next one. So we don't have to take charge of all 33,000. And let's say that, using the logic that 95% of what we do is done by habit. So that would say that we're running probably 31 or 32,000 of them are by habit, and then maybe 1,000 of them are conscious. I don't need to get 10,000 of them in the conscious side. I just need more than like 1,000 or 2,000. I'd be happy with 3,000 or 4,000 as an example. So we have beliefs, neuroplasticity, and that's kind of what we were talking about today. It applies to thinking the same way it applies to exercise. That's an important point. So muscle memory is not really muscle memory, it's really nervous system memory, and that nervous system memory applies whether you're talking about exercise or you're talking about getting ready for a speech or a presentation. And we have priming. Priming's big. And mindset. I talked about this last week. That's still up there. You can go look at last week's live event. And then we have physiology. So physiology is more important than people think. First of all, the neurons are physiological, right? Neurobiological. And you can prime yourself with physiology into fight or flight, being prepared for fight or flight. You can prime yourself for courage with your physiology. And more to say on that, but these are the things we talk about as we go through those laps, because there's so many layers to unpack. And it depends on where the client is and where their head is and what their obstacles are. But when I talk about this today, instead of thinking about yourself, if you maybe think about somebody that you know, somebody who has challenges with things that they're doing, and then see if it resonates, some of the stuff that I'm talking about. I just realized I need to move back because you probably can't see the cones. Right, so we have beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming, mindset, and physiology. On this side, we have a gap, right? We have a pre-stimulus, and that's pre-stimulus. There's cognitive pre-stimulus, or state of mind, state of being. So there's cognitive state of being, and there's a physical state of being. There's a physiological state of being. So if I'm all already carrying a posture of depression, and I'm sad, I'm walking around, woe is me, and I get hit with the negative news, I'm already set up to go into fight or flight. So we want to watch our physiological state of being. And then we have a stimulus. And that stimulus generates a reaction within a quarter of a second. Our conscious mind is not even aware yet. To put it in perspective, cats respond in like 50 to 80 milliseconds. A quarter of a second is 250 milliseconds. Dogs are about 150 milliseconds. And athletes can get down to that 150 milliseconds because they're constantly training. You see them doing the different speed exercises, reaction drills. And then a quarter of a second later, the conscious mind comes online. We have a choice, but we don't realize we have a choice because it happens so fast. We could choose to disregard what the subconscious is telling us and go with what the conscious mind wants. But too often we let the response equal the reaction. This is what we're going to talk about today. Now, if you have a new project, let me just check my recordings. Yeah, I've had so many things go wrong between heat, signals getting messed up, and the live getting disconnected. I'm now checking it more often when I'm outside. When I'm inside, I don't have a problem. In the studio, there's no problem. But out here, definitely. All right. I'm going to leave this alone today. And go watch next week. I'm assuming that we have the ability to get ourselves into a physiological and a cognitive state of being that's appropriate to deal with the challenges that come to us in the day. So now what I'm going to do is break the stimulus response cycle up into 6 steps. Now it's all in 1 second, so stay with me. And it's a lot easier if you're thinking about somebody else rather than yourself because you're in it. And it's almost like asking the fox if the hen house locked. So, you already have the answers before you have the question. But if you think about somebody else, you'll see it. So we have a stimulus, then we have a reaction, that's a quarter of a second. Then we have a response from the conscious mind, assuming we choose to do that. Then we have a decision. And then we have action. And if it still goes wrong, we do emotional modulation. So there's just 6 steps. Now these first 5 can all be inside of a second. The emotional modulation step is more like another 90 seconds. I'll explain that in a moment. So this is the mental area, and it's not all of it, but I go through the mental area over and over and over. It just depends on where the person is getting stuck and why they're getting stuck. And it's like I'm peeling an onion because we can get it solved in one area at one level. Like a person is in sales and they get it hammered, nailed down, they got it going and they get promoted and now they have to sell to groups. And selling to groups has more challenges, and then we have to go through it again. Because it's a different identity that's needed. It's different steps that's needed. It's different habits that are needed, habits of thought. And we have to also get past the fight or flight, the fears, the anxieties. So stimulus comes in. Think about somebody who's struggling with where they are and they're stuck and they're trying to make it work and they keep running into a brick wall. Think about that person. They tend to, if the stimulus is to leave to go to an appointment, that's the stimulus. The reaction is, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is get ready. And if the reaction and the response is that, now they're off into just getting ready. But if you think about somebody who's habitually late, here's what's probably happening. What they do doesn't work. It leads to them being late all the time. But because they have a stimulus and the reaction is not based on what works, but how they start. So the stimulus triggers starting the same way, and now the 33,000 decisions, right? So let's say there's several hundred decisions that are going to be made in that getting ready process. They're just doing the same thing over and over and over, and then they're late. If that person did this, and this is not the end, this is not where I'm going. I just want to make the distinction about stimulus response and give you a frame that you can start thinking about. If the person did this, instead of starting with what they want, they go to the end and say, my desire is to be there 10 minutes early. So what's the step I have to do that before? I'm going to get away from here because I don't want to confuse it. They go to the end and say, I want to be there 10 minutes early. What's the step I need to do before that moment? I have to get in the car and start it and be on my way out the driveway by whatever time. What do I have to do before that for that to happen? I have to be finished. I have to get my keys, the clock, the blah, this, all that stuff, right? And all that has to be done and ready by 10, 15 minutes after the hour. And what do I have to do to have all that ready? I have to get ready, not in my best time. I have to be able to get ready completely inside of this window. And the window I have is this. And I want to do it calmly. I don't want to be rushing. So they're not going to use their personal best. You can see what that happens, right? Sometimes people, they give themselves the amount of time they need for their personal best, not allowing for traffic, not allowing for glitches, not allowing for not finding the keys. Then what has to happen? And then, I have to start getting ready right now. No time to scroll on social media. You can see the difference. Hopefully that makes sense. So the old way would be they have to go for a meeting and they start the same way, which is I think about how much time it takes me to get there, but they connect with the personal best because that's how they always do it. It's primed. 33,000 decisions. We're doing the same decision over and over. They make the decision based on my personal best. It takes me 27 minutes to get there. So that's how much they give themselves. And so I have to leave by, 9:33. But things always happen. Now, if you go to the end, in that same example, they go back and say, we want to get there 5 to 10 minutes early. They start coming back. What do I have to do to get that? What do I have to do to get that? What do I have to do to get that? Now, it's no longer leaving at 9:33. It's now leaving at 9:10 or 9:15, and which means they don't have the time to scroll on social media. They don't have the time to lollygag. They don't have time for a second cup of coffee, whatever it is. That's just an example to start painting some pictures. Again, not directly related to this illustration I'm doing now. This illustration is stimulus, reaction, response, decision, action, and then if needed, emotional modulation. So this whole first part is 3/4 of a second. From here to here is 3/4 of a second. This is an extra potentially 90 seconds. In here, inside this 1/4 of a second. Now, by the way, I'm not a neuroscientist. I've been trained. I had the good fortune of being able to talk to neuroscientists about some of these things, asking some of the questions, some of the struggles I've been having with closing this gap between the placebo effect and what I want to accomplish. Let me make sure my sound is still on. Yeah, okay. I wanted to be able to, that I was able to talk to them to start closing this gap. And so what I'm saying is practically speaking, accurate. I am not here working on any kind of thesis. I'm not holding myself to a bar where I have to explain it in such a way that I can be peer reviewed. I invite neuroscientists to come in and clean up where I'm messing up, but I will tell you this is consistent with anything that you read or find in this context. It may not use the same language, and as a matter of fact, most of your literature calls the subconscious a mind. You'll notice I don't call it a mind because it's a network of neurons, and calling it a mind makes it harder to be able to gain control of it and to put it in its proper place. Sub means below. The subconscious, we want it below. We want the conscious mind here, and then we want the higher self guiding, running the show. But today, and that's where we get into the spiritual. Today is mental. So I got in here, we have where the cognitive biases come into play. Now, I can't measure this. I can't prove it. But knowing what I know about cognitive biases and other mental heuristics or cognitive heuristics are shortcuts. It could be meta programs. It could be, so the thing about that person who's late all the time, it's almost like that whole thing has become a meta program. It's a bundle of neural pathways that fired in so often at the same time. The neurons that fire together and wire together, that becomes a meta program. That comes in at this place right here, and it collapses. It has the potential to collapse the reaction, the response, the decision, and the action all into one. So it takes all of these, makes it one, and puts it right there. And this person thinks they're so smart because that's what they were rewarded with in school. They have a stimulus. They already know the answer. They know what to do, and now you can't change their mind. You've had that happen. And if they get triggered, remember, you got this emotional modulation out here. If they get triggered and you don't catch it, they can spiral very quickly. We don't want that. And most of you have seen people where you walk around on eggshells, tiptoeing around on eggshells because you don't want to trigger them. And I remember having to explain projects to senior people who the whole thing was you build up this whole deck to make sure you don't trigger anybody. And you got to put in this page so that person doesn't get triggered, and put in this page so that person doesn't get triggered. And it's you waste a lot of time. And it's because of this thing that happens. We've been rewarded for having the answer right away. So now, in order to handle cognitive biases, what we're going to do is put in a step that's called the positivity exercise. In the positivity exercise, we're going to train the subconscious, we're going to train the neurons, we're going to train the neural pathways in that process to, instead of looking for threats, to be biased to look for good. Now, it's not quite like that, but if you consider that the subconscious, the objective is to stay alive, so it's predisposed to look for threats, and it makes threats out of things that are not threats. What we want to do is use the positivity drill or positivity exercise to retrain the subconscious. And then that way, when you get to the reaction, it's less likely to be, oh my gosh, the house is on fire. Oh my gosh, we're going to lose everything. It realizes that there's no threat, and then it's off looking for some other threat. But that particular stimulus is not a threat. Just that alone is going to give you peace. Then we have the ability to pause. So this is a quarter second, this is a quarter second. And in this quarter of a second, you want to pause. But what happens is, if you're already triggered here, or you've already made your decision and it's collapsed, the response and the reaction is one, there's no, you can't pause. So pause is basically just reaffirming what you already believe and what you've already said or thought. So what we're going to do is now pause, but this isn't just a regular pause. What we're going to do in that pause is we are training the subconscious to hand us off the information. So the subconscious, because this network of neurons, think of it as energy running through the neural pathways. In this quarter of a second, it's had the ability to process 1 million bits of information. So the subconscious, the network of neurons, the neural pathways, energy flowing through them, processes 11 million bits per second. The conscious mind only processes 50 bits per second. So by a half second in, the conscious mind comes online. It's slow at 50 bits a second. The subconscious has already processed 1 million bits or more, and it's just going to give this off. And if it's predisposed to look for danger, it's going to hand you this thing with all the threats. We don't want that. So what this one is, this pause, we're actually training the subconscious. We don't do this real time. You have to do this with exercises. It takes a week at a time. The positivity exercise takes about 4 to 6 weeks. But you can do these other ones with awareness and just trials. Just do reps. It's just like the footwork drills. You do reps, you're doing it perfectly with some deep practice. So here you're training the subconscious to hand off. I like to think of it as the first step of problem solving is clearly define the problem. So first of all, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity, because you don't have the negativity, you've got positivity. And this is not positive thinking, this is not reframing, this is changing it at the subconscious interaction stimulus response level So even before the reaction, it's already, the bias is already shifted. Then what we're doing here is it's giving us the problem-solving model in quick real time. It can process 11 million bits per second. Why not give me a quick version of a low-cost solution? Problem-solving model is clearly define the problem, come up with possible solutions, choose the best solution, implement and follow up. So what's the best solution? So in other words, it's giving me a recommendation. So that's happening here. My response now, I'm going to do that pretty quickly. The response will be either I'm going to do it. So out of my 33,000 stimulus response cycles a day, 30,000 of them I'll probably do exactly what the subconscious handed off, because habits are good, right? I mean, I don't want to have to learn how to brush my teeth every day. So habits are good. So 30,000 times I'll probably do exactly what the subconscious was recommending, or the recommends. But 3,000 times I may intervene, and so I have 4 choices. This is all happening. We're still not at it. We're getting to 3/4 of a second. This is happening so fast, but you're training yourself at the stimulus response level. So you're leveraging the 11 million bits per second that the network of neurons already has, and you're just leveraging that, but doing it by your design. I can do it, I can delay it, I can discard it, or I can delegate it. So do it, delay it, discard it, delegate it. And delegate it could mean I'm going to have a meeting. It means I can give it to somebody else and give it to the attorney. I could just set it out to a project, make it into a project. That's sort of delay. And then we have the decision. So the decision becomes how to do it. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you are a boss who tends to, or just you're a salesperson who tends to get flustered when a person gives you a certain kind of objection. And that's happening at this point. That's happening right here. So the decision, if you feel yourself getting flustered, you may need 10 seconds or so just to get yourself together. You might say, excuse me, man, I just need to check on something. And you get up and you leave the room. Or hold on a second, if you're on the phone, hold on, let me just check something. If you're on a Zoom call, let me just check something. You get up, take your deep breaths, you come back. That's the decision. Your decision is, am I going to go forward with it now? How am I going to implement it? So this was the action. Do it, delegate it, delay it, discard it. And then here is how we're going to do it. How are we going to delay it? How are we going to do it? How are we going to discard it? What are we going to do? That's the decision. So these things could happen all at once, but I want to make it a distinction that you're actually deciding how am I going to implement it. Maybe the do it is you have to reprimand the employee. That could be the thing. Reprimand the employees to do it. Well, the decision is how am I going to do it? So positivity, get the handoff with the problem-solving model. We're going to have a response, do it, delegate it, delay it, discard it. And then we have the decision, which is the how. It's very easy for people to come up with the what, but if you don't also think about the how, we are often back into our primed automatic responses because we do what we did before. But the how should be a conscious thought. And there's my 1 second. So that is my 1 second. Now let's say that we get a little bit discombobulated. And despite all of that goodness, we still get a freak out. Now let's talk about this fight or flight for a moment. One of the reasons why people are so under stress is because the fight or flight can be like a switch, like an on-off switch, not a dimmer. And fight or flight, because it's at the survival level, we're prepared for a tiger in the Serengeti. Most of us don't have tiger level threats multiple times a year. We may have had a tiger level threat a few times in our life, but most of us are not having them every month. We're not having them every quarter. but yet the reaction of the body is to do that. So we don't want that. But it can still happen. You can still get triggered. Somebody says something a certain way, and now you're discombobulated. Your emotions are running crazy. And that's where we do the emotional modulation. And this is where you need to step away. So when we made that decision, the how, if we knew that this was a triggering event, we could feel the blood rushing up. We could feel the breathing getting shallow. We could feel the neck tightening. Don't wait. Don't try to suppress it, because if you suppress it, that's like saying, I'm not going to run from this tiger. I'm not going to run from the tiger. Your whole body's saying, run, run, run. And you're saying, I'm not going to run from the tiger. You're fighting against this, a losing battle. Your body's going to win, and you're going to take off running. So don't wait. Don't delay it. Say, you know what? Give me a minute to think about it. I just want to look at something. I want to think about something. Why don't we get together in 15 minutes? Come into my office. Let's hop on the call in 15 minutes. That gives you the time to do the 90-second emotional modulation. There you go. You handle with this by conditioning it in. You handle the cognitive biases, the heuristics, the meta programs. So now we're not reacting out of just craziness. Because of the positivity exercise, we're not biased for threat. Then we put a pause in between the reaction and response, because especially if I'm doing something new, if I'm in an operational environment and the stuff I'm doing is the stuff I've been doing, it's not a big problem there. It's probably going to be very similar. But if I'm working a new project, everything is new landscape, new people, new objectives, new customers, new products. The chances are what I did before is not going to be the right thing to do the next time. So I don't want my reaction and response, my response equal my reaction. I want this to be a data point, maybe 20% data point. So if I'm in an operational environment, maybe this is a 70 or 80% data point. If I'm doing something brand new, I'm in a new job, new company, completely new state, new city, I want this is no more than 20% data point. A data point, or 20% weight, I should say. That reaction is going to have a 20% weight. It's still going to hand me off a completed problem solving model, the first 3 steps, clearly define the problem, come up with possible solutions, select the best solution, and then the implement suggestion would be there. But now I've got the responses. I'm going to do it. I'm going to delegate it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to delay it. I'm going to discard it. I'm going to delegate it. And then we're going to take action. We're going to make the decision and then take the action. That's the decision. Then we take the action. Then if the emotions are still running, that's where I go into the emotional modulation. And that's a 90-second process that you can go through. And I have if you go to it's high performance self-coaching. I go through this in some detail, give some examples. And that's the mental area. Then next week I'll talk about the physical area. Physical area we'll talk a little bit more about the toxins, cleaning the blood, and also setting ourselves up so there's fewer toxins. And then, it's like coming from under the line to above the line. And I'm not going to pass judgment here, but if they use placebos sometimes for prescription meds, because the placebos work almost as well as the prescription meds but without the side effects, then why not take charge of that whole thing and do what our body needs? And our body needs the lymphatic fluid moved. It needs the breathing, the deep breathing. It needs the clean blood. It needs hydration so we get the oxygen and nutrients to the brain without putting it into stress mode. And that's the physical area. Then the following week I'll do spiritual, and then I'll do emotional. And the emotional one I'll talk about the emotional modulation. All right, there you go. Let me know your comments, and you can start putting your own exercises, drills out on the Facebook group, Life Expansion After 50.